This mother forced her daughter to play hide and seek at the park every night at 9 p.m. One night, it wasn't a game. Clara was aware that none of her friends engaged in similar activities with their parents, yet she also believed that there was nothing unusual about her nightly routine. After so many weeks of playing, Clara started to enjoy the park at night. The air was always fresh and quiet, and the trees seemed bigger than usual. Each time they played hide and seek, the mother counted down from 100, giving her daughter enough time to run away. Clara's competitive nature, though, always drove her to run as far as possible. The park was large, but somehow her mother would always manage to walk past her at least 3 times while searching for her. Clara would often hear her mother as she walked past her saying, "Come out, Clara, please come out, it's cold, I just want to go home." But Clara would ignore her mother's requests. When they first began playing the game, she had been foolish enough to leave her hiding place. Her mother would immediately become angry when she did this. She'd walk up, grab her tightly by the shoulder, and she would yell relentlessly, "I told you not to listen to me, didn't I?" She would drag Clara back to the car and ignore her until the next day when they played again. Clara didn't understand why her mother did this. When it was her mother's turn to hide somewhere, Clara could never find her, but somehow her mother was excellent at tracking her down. It was like she sniffed the air and hunted her down. As time went on, when Clara's mother would find her, instead of getting angry, she would be visibly disappointed. She'd sigh loudly and her eyes would tear up before dejectedly walking to the car. This would make Clara feel awful. One time, her mother found her after only 2 minutes, and she broke down sobbing. Clara couldn't understand how she found her so quickly. So Clara started to get creative. She started hiding in bushes. She started to change her clothing to be more green and black and generally more inconspicuous. She would get high up in trees so it would be difficult to see her from the ground. She even learned how to stay still, really still. When she finally started to win, her mother would simply just smile at her. It wasn't a smile of happiness or a smile of pleasure. It was much more of a relieved smile, but Clara felt so proud whenever she saw it. At the same time, however, her mother's smile almost at times looked evil, almost dangerous in a way. One day when Clara arrived home from school, she saw her father talking to her mother. This was surprising because she had only seen her father twice in her entire life, and her mother never talked about him. She immediately noticed the expression on her mother's face. Her complexion was pale and her eyes were wide. Clara couldn't hear the conversation, so she walked closer to them, and as she did, they stopped talking. Her father turned to her, his face lit up with a big smile. The whole situation made Clara feel very uncomfortable. Later, when her dad wasn't around, Clara's mother leaned in close and whispered, "Don't come out, not even after 20 minutes. This confused Clara. Her mom didn't look well, so she thought they would be staying home that night. But as it got closer to 9 p.m., her mom said, "Let's take a trip to the park." Clara immediately noticed that her mom didn't mention anything about hide and seek. "Why should we go to the park?" her father asked. "Why not? Let's get some fresh air," her mom responded. "Fine. I like him active anyway," he said. What the hell did he mean by that? Clara thought. Her mom then looked over in a very specific way and told her to go change her clothes, and she caught what she meant immediately, putting on her hiding clothes. On the drive to the park, her mother was silent the entire way, but her father hummed. The family walked in the park for a while, her dad mumbling about work. Clara didn't pay much attention to her father's words. It didn't sound like any job she had heard of. Then, suddenly, her mother pointed at a tree in the distance. Clara noticed that it was the same tree that her mother found her hiding behind the last time they played hide and seek. "These trees get so old. Then they die. It's a shame they're stuck in a place, unable to get away from death," her mom said. Clara felt that her mother was trying to tell her to go hide by pointing out to these trees. "Death is the way of all living things. No need to fear it," her dad said. "I think I saw a squirrel in that tree. I'm gonna go check it out," said Clara as she ran away. She wanted to get far away before her parents started looking for her. As she ran, she thought about climbing the tree, but then decided to dive into a couple bushes instead. As she hid from her parents, she focused on trying to control her breath. After a couple of minutes, she heard her parents walking in the distance. "Clara, where are you, sweetheart? If you're hurt, please say something and we'll help," her dad shouted. "Clara, can you hear me, darling?" her mother said. Clara's heart started beating faster. She knew for a fact that she shouldn't leave the bushes. In her mother's eyes, exposing her hiding place would be the absolute worst thing she could do. "Please, Clara, your dad isn't dangerous. Please come out. Clara, we need to get going soon," her mother shouted. Eventually, her parents' voices began to fade out into the distance. Clara remained in the bushes, in the same position for almost an entire hour. Her body started to ache, and she could feel insects crawling around on the back of her legs. She wanted to leave this position after hearing a stick snap in the distance behind her. She began to feel anxious as she hadn't heard anyone's voice for such a long time. Then suddenly she could hear her mother say, "Clara, please come out!" Her voice sounded more and more desperate, more guttural this time. Her mother's voice seemed to be approaching closer and closer. Clara could hear her mom saying, "I know you're in the area. It's only a matter of time before I find you. I will skin you. I'll start with your forearms, peeling off your skin with a dull knife, just like peeling back cheese. I wager there'll be lots of blood coming out and screaming. I won't be able to focus, but that's all right. I can always switch to your other arm. You won't like it. Certainly I wouldn't. But I'm not as stupid and disgusting as you are, Clara. No, I'm glad I'm not a creature of filth like you. The only good you can serve is by being in my belly, by fueling me. I'll find you. You'll regret not coming out," her mom said while giggling and coming closer and closer. Clara was in shock. She debated whether she should stay and still hope for the best, or if she should just try and run away as fast as possible. "Clara! Stop with this silly nonsense and come out!" her mother shouted. Clara stayed in that bush for the entire night, even after she was certain that she couldn't hear her mother anymore. It was only when the sun was above her and she heard other children at the playground that she finally stood up out of the bushes. Clara then made her way back home. As she approached the house, she noticed that the door was unlocked. As she walked inside, she noticed that her mother was there, but her father wasn't.